Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages, sexualities, and identities, and welcome back to another Doctor Who review. And today's Doctor Who review, for all of you out there listening, is Storm Warning. You're most probably thinking, what Storm Warning? I've watched all of Doctor Who, but I don't know what you're talking about, Lewis. Well, let me give you a little insight. There is a production out there that I have mentioned most probably a few times in these reviews, and that is none other than Big Finish for the love of stories. Yes, Big Finish Productions, a phenomenal production that has brought to life so many audio stories set in the Doctor Who universe. Now, in this case, we're exploring the Eighth Doctor's era, and Big Finish has done a very good job at essentially setting the Doctor up on his way and exploring the life of this Edwardian adventurer throughout time and space. Now that we've got all that cleared up, let's get into the basis of this story. Doctor has landed on a airship after escaping a collision with vortisaurs in the vortex. Now, what are vortisaurs? The best way to describe them is think of out of space pterodactyls. And they basically swarm the vortex for like little scraps of things that have fallen through. And in this case, they start attacking the Doctor's time machine, the TARDIS. After escaping them, the Doctor finds himself on the airship, the R-101. Now, a little history lesson for all of you out there. The R-101 was an actual airship that took place during... It was completed back in 1929, and it eventually crash-landed in France in 1930 on the October the 5th. The R-101 was a British airship which was making its first travel in airspace in hopes of basically seeing the world. But due to its crash and its accident which occurred, which was a very big tragedy, it never ever took another trip again. Now, back to the story point, the Doctor gets on the R-101 and at first he doesn't know what airship he's on. Elsewhere, there is a young Edwardian adventuress known as Charlotte Pollard. Charlotte Pollard, obviously living in the Edwardian times, knows that it's very ashamed for women to essentially be anything in an airship or a crew, and so she disagrees with this and takes it into her own hands and boards the R-101. Disguising herself as a man to get on board in the first place, and also because of a bet that she made a very long time ago with a guy that she liked on the basis that she wanted to go out on a date with him. She used the R-101 on the basis that it would be the quickest way for the trip, as any other form of transport at the time was nor fast enough or adapted enough to go as fast as an airship. Upon being discovered as a stowaway on the R-101, she begins to dart off into the distance of the airship, going from cabin to cabin in hopes of avoiding her pursuers. In doing so, she crashes into the Doctor, who is amazed by what is happening, and so he helps her hide. Whilst helping her hide, he ends up finding that there is more than meets the eye in a conspiracy going on the airship. There is a mystery guest locked in a room, and on top of it, there is a problem with a vortisaur being locked in a cage. Eventually, the Doctor finds out that this mystery alien is part of a higher civilization who has essentially come to Earth by accident, and now the British intelligence is trying to make a bid in order to get them back home, but to their own means. The R-101 eventually gets taken up into this UFO, and upon returning the creature to its people, they begin to discover that its people, who are very ancient beings, are having a very divided debate on how their society will go forward. As they are all psychic beings, they all link and they all do what one another says. One of the brutal beings that don't believe in being a linked body and believes in being a dictator takes over the body of a human who has his own motives to overthrow his business partner, who he had agreed with to take over the UFO. This, of course, backfires when the Doctor realizes that any grumbling or growling would basically send these creatures into like a shock, an absolute fear for their lives, because they believe that that growling is more scarier than them as a being in itself. Eventually, the creature leaves him and the UFO lets the R101 go after one of the main captains stays behind to take over this new society as leader. But the problem isn't over, as the Doctor and Charlie will eventually find out. They go back to the R101, only to find out that the cowardly idiot is boasting around to everyone that he is the hero, and he has also taken a piece of machinery too advanced for Earth in that century. To devises a plan to stop him in his tracks, and so he nudges him and gets into an altercation, taking the device and then tries to flee to destroy it. Once eventually managing to dispose of the machine part, when coming into an altercation with the guy who was boasting and basically believing himself to be more powerful than anyone else, the Doctor finds that the man goes flying out of the airbag as the Voltosaur seems to have broken free and ripped open the hull of the R101. Now, of course, with the real R101, this didn't happen, but it does still play into the basis of the airbags, as the airbags and the pressure is what caused the real R101 to collapse and burn in France. Doctor and Charlie are left with very little options on how to escape the R101, and so their only escape method happens to be the Vortisaur, who they jump on the back of and fly down out of the R101, escaping the flames and the absolute inferno of its destruction. They are safely away from the airship and on the ground. The Doctor begins to contemplate the problem with the web of time, as he just realizes that he has saved Charlotte Pollard from the flames and the inferno of the bodies that would have remained in France. After counting the skulls and the body, the Doctor realizes that there should have been 54, not 53 bodies, meaning that Charlotte Pollard is indeed one of the missing dead. Causes the Doctor to absolutely reminisce to himself about the problem that this is going to cause with the web of time and how history is going to be swayed differently. Charlotte, after chasing down the Vortisaur, who seems to have run off from her due to the web of time, then mutters to the Doctor how the Vortisaur looks a lot like a Ramsay, the Prime Minister of England at the time. Doctor gives up on his reminiscences and talking to himself, and of course decides to agree with Charlotte on this matter. So that's the basis of the Storm Warning episode. So what do I give Storm Warning out of 10? Well, for a reintroduction to the Eighth Doctor, especially after the confusing storyline in the TV movie, I do believe that it brings life back into the character and really gets us to sympathise with the type of Doctor that we are about to have established. We already sympathise with the Eighth Doctor, of course, in the TV movie, knowing that he at first has no clue to who he is. But now that he knows who he is and now that he's taking these adventures, I like that this story really starts to grasp this whole idea of what could happen if you start meddling with time. I also like how it constantly reiterates the effect of advanced technology on the future of the whole human race. And for that reason, I'm going to give Storm Warning a 10 out of 10. No notes. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in another Doctor Who review. Until then, stay beautiful, and allons-y.